Alright, so in this video we're going to look at two techniques for the thoracic spine in a seated position. These techniques are predominantly going to work well between probably about T4 to T7, possibly 8, but then you start getting too low for this technique to be, or these techniques to be very efficacious just from a contact and position standpoint. Here I'm going to do both a flexion technique as well as a pure distraction technique. With the flexion technique, the idea is that I'm going to stabilize the spine just below a predetermined level of stiffness. As I do that, I'll stabilize him. I end up pulling him into a position that would lead to distraction this way of that joint, or that presumed area of stiffness. After that, I'm going to do a distraction technique, which is the idea is that we're just unloading the entire spine. For that, I usually will go above the area of stiffness that I've identified. That way, when I lift the person up, I'm distracting everything below it. So, in order to make this good body mechanics while I do this technique, ideally I don't want to be in this position. I'd like to have more of a staggered stance. If he is sitting into a comfortable position with these relatively wide tables, I end up needing to lean quite a bit to get to him, which makes that very ineffective and inefficient for me. So what I'm going to have Freddie do is slide back so he's closer to the edge of the table for me. Ideally ask him if there's any problems with the legs, just in case there's any adverse neural tension that you're working against. And then from there, I have a better mechanical advantage to allow me to be in that standing or walking stance. Now, a couple of different ways to create your contact point. One is using a towel, of which you just roll it up, makes a nice little prominence that you can press against to create that stabilization. The other one, which works a little bit more for males, is just to use the pec muscle. So either one of them, and then the towel you can also go straight ahead versus being turned slightly to the side, which is my preferred method. Now, the grip or the position that the person's arms are going to be is the same as what they would do with the supine technique. So one directly over the other one, not in this weird wrapper type position. So just like that. All right, so if I want to get it so that I can actually pull that person into this direction, so back and towards me during the thrust, it's going to be nice for me to really use the curve of his back to help me out. So what I'll end up doing is identify that area that I want to manipulate, and then I'll rock him back so that that area is as close to being the most prominent this way as possible. That way when I thrust, I pull right here versus needing to have him flex and pull more up this direction to create the gapping that I want. So all together, I've got him here. I'm going to sit him up nice and tall first. From there, get him to relax. Good. Let your head drop for me. I'm going to rock him back until that apex is right by me, and then breath in, breath out, and then just a slight pull back. Same time I'm bringing my chest forward to make that a solid contact point. So breath in, breath out, and then that's the thrust. So that's the flexion technique. The next one is going to be more the distraction technique. Everything's pretty much the same here. We just don't need to utilize as much flexion of the spine to help us out with this one. So I'll come across the top here. Again, I'm now above the area that I believe is stiff. I'm going to let him rest his head forward just because it seems to be more comfortable. From there, take a breath in, all the way out. And now I just lift up, like that. And the idea is that I'm creating traction below. Sometimes that's a little bit hard for some therapists. So one other variation that you can do is you would just go ahead and get them to relax, lift up, and then a little shake at the end, which will give you a secondary chance to unload the spine.